Today we discover a story where a quiet life is shattered by an extraordinary secret. Samuel Washington, a humble hospital worker, loses his beloved wife Lorraine, only to find she's left behind not just memories, but a hidden fortune meant to change the world. Shock turns to courage as Samuel faces elite families, social prejudice, and the pressures surrounding his son's high-stakes wedding. In a breathtaking moment, dignity triumphs over wealth, reshaping relationships and forging an unforgettable legacy. Lorraine's fortune becomes a force for good, sparking a foundation that lifts children and unites communities. Grief gives way to hope as ordinary routines transform into lifelong impact, and one small family's love ripples through an entire city. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? Imagine standing at the crossroads of hope and despair, where every decision can crack open a new world or destroy the last of your dreams. For many, the bustling city lights of Lagos are the promise of fortune, a magnet that draws unpolished stories and broken wishes from dusty villages far away. But for Veronica, it was more than an adventure. It was her family's last hope. Even before dawn spread its first weak glow on the muddy streets of OJI River, Veronica was already awake. She wasn't delicately painting her nails or weaving her hair into complex styles like other girls her age. Instead, her hands, caked with the pale dust of cement, gripped shovel handles as she toiled alongside men twice her age and thrice her weight. Her skin bore the stories of hardship, blisters ringed her palms, scars mapped her knuckles, and her sweat soaked through jeans that had seen too many repairs. All of this for one reason: to save her father. Her father, Panamdi, once the pride of their village as a beloved teacher, now lay withered and silent, felled by a mysterious illness that no medicine at the local clinic could cure. His strong voice, which used to echo with the timbre of wisdom and laughter, had become a shadow of itself, fragile, barely more than a whisper. By his side, always, was Mama Veronica, whose hands aged in caring for her husband, in spoon-feeding him hope as prayers glimmered on her lips. But hope, like the water in their bucket, ran dry much too quickly. Veronica was just 22, but responsibility had aged her. Her classmates chased love, laughter, selfies, and ceremonies while she stirred piles of sand and rock, becoming the missing miracle her mother pleaded for each night. Life had not given her the option of a gentle youth. Each coin she earned was a tightrope above disaster, spent mostly on medicine that offered too little, too late. That afternoon, as the merciless sun baked the earth and swept sweat into Veronica's eyes, life changed course, though not in the way she hoped. A sleek, black SUV rolled up to the construction site, its glossy exterior spraying red dust onto roughened boots and calloused hands. Out stepped a vision of urban luxury, a woman in flowing lace, gold chains that chimed with authority, sunglasses that hid her eyes but revealed her status. Even the air bent around her, shifting with the scent of imported perfume and the weight of money. The men at the construction site fell silent, exchanging looks of recognition and gossip Madame P, someone whispered. She strode straight toward Veronica, heels sinking only slightly into the hot earth. For a heartbeat, Veronica froze, cement bucket clutched to her chest, unsure if she was in trouble or if this was a dream. "You, what's your name?" Madame P's tone was brisk, but her gaze lingered. "Veronica, ma," she replied, barely containing both surprise and an instinctive urge to shrink away. Madame P's laughter rang out, brittle and amused. "Imagine, a woman stronger than any man here. You're made of steel, yet covered in sweat and dust, and somehow you're beautiful underneath it all. Would you listen if I told you I can give you a new life?" Disbelief flickered in Veronica's tired eyes. "Change my life, ma? I live in Lagos. I help girls like you. Come with me. I will give you a job that pays more in a month than you've earned in a year. No more bricklaying or lifting blocks. I believe you were born for better things." For the first time in years, hope flashed across Veronica's heart. That night, she ran home, her smile bright as the midday sun. Mama Veronica paused feeding her husband as their only child burst in, her words tumbling out in a rush. Plans spilled out. Dreams they'd buried began to stir. Papa warned caution, but there was little choice. Veronica needed to try. They did not sleep that night. Mama Veronica wept silently, the pain of separation mingling with the flicker of hope that perhaps, finally, things would change for the better. Veronica's father, frail but determined, gave his blessing, praying she'd be shielded from shame, from the city's unkindness, and that one day she would return, greater than the girl who left. Morning came heavy with expectation and fear as Madame P's SUV rolled into the compound. Goodbyes melted into embraces. Promises were made at the doorstep. "I'll come back with money for your treatment, Papa," Veronica whispered, swallowing the ache in her chest. The drive to Lagos was long, the heat inside the car nearly suffocating to someone used to open fields and simple homes. Veronica pressed her face against the window, mesmerized by towns flashing by, trees bending in the wind, the city skyline rising like a ship out of a stormy sea. Each passing billboard advertised lives she'd never imagined. Madame P remained distant, absorbed in her phone calls, her words sharp and commanding. But the ache of hope returned with force when they finally reached Lagos. Veronica stared wide-eyed at the spectacle. Endless rows of glass towers, roads writhing with honking cars and crisscrossing pedestrians, life pulsing in every direction. Their journey ended at a sparkling gated estate in Lekki, marble-paved, flower-lined, and worlds apart from everything she'd known. Inside Madame P's mansion, reality blurred into something like a fantasy. Veronica marveled at the marble floors, the soft sofas, the overflowing fridge, the promise of rest and safety. Years of deprivation evaporated with the scent of hot showers and the taste of juicy chicken, luxuries she'd only dreamt of. That first night, she cried softly, not from despair but stunned relief. But as the days trickled by, the cracks in the illusion began to show. Madame P never brought up work. "Relax, enjoy yourself," she urged, her voice syrupy sweet but sharp at the edges. Veronica was restless, Her conscience nagged with each day her father's treatment was delayed, each idle evening spent staring at the ceiling. When she finally asked about the promised job, something changed in Madame P's grin. "Tonight," Madame P said, "be ready. Your new life starts now." Excitement warred with anxiety as Veronica prepared, ironing her best dress, imagining respectful hotel work, or perhaps a night shift job that paid well. But when Madame P handed her a tiny revealing dress and a command to go out with a guest who paid for you, horror tore through her heart. Veronica's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I can't. I'm not a prostitute." The response was ice cold. "Then get out. Take your bag and disappear before I call security." And just like that, Hope was thrown out onto the unforgiving streets of Lagos, dressed in rags instead of riches. The gates clanged shut behind her, the echo ringing in Veronica's ears as if her whole world had collapsed. Alone, afraid, unprepared, and stripped of all illusions, she stood barefoot on the cold pavement, shivering not just from nighttime chill, but from fear of the unknown. Her only possessions were a cheap nylon bag of clothes and a battered phone, useless as it held no SIM, no lifeline. The streets stretched out, vast and uncaring. The city which hours before had seemed painted with opportunity and light revealed its other face, a jungle of concrete, ink-dark shadows, and harsh voices. Cabs rolled past, drivers offering cruel winks or lewd proposals. Security guards hissed suspicions. She drifted, dazed and beaten, across hostile avenues and through indifferent crowds. By the time the city's lights faded into an unkind dawn, Veronica had learned firsthand how cruel Lagos could be to a girl with no home and no one to call. She curled on a bench at a bus stop, chased away by rough men, then huddled next to a locked kiosk, sleepless and hungry, clutching her dignity as tightly as her threadbare wrapper. But under the ache and humiliation, something flickered and refused to die. Her will. Even as tears tracked her cheeks in the darkness, Veronica made a vow. "I won't let this be the end. I will find a way to survive, with my soul intact, and I will make my papa proud." When the sun finally clawed its way above the city's corrugated rooftops, Veronica was already moving, less out of hope than necessity. Her limbs were stiff, her eyelids heavy, but Lagos forced its rhythm on everyone. She followed the tide of workers streaming into the market district, blending into a crowd whose faces bore stories as desperate as hers. Here, beneath the shadow of a burnt billboard, she met the beggars. Old men sprawled on threadbare mats, children with haunting eyes weaving through human rivers, women clutching infants wrapped in faded cloth. They all seemed invisible, yet they watched, always. Veronica's naivety melted away with each glance. In Lagos, nobody cared how you landed on the streets. Survival was the only currency that mattered. A gaunt grandmother, who everyone dubbed the Queen of Ojo Square, noticed Veronica and beckoned her close. She wore a bundle of colorful wrappers and a regal thread of beads around her neck, a goddess forgotten by time and fortune. But her eyes shimmered with a strange authority, and her words cut through the noise. "Girl, you look lost. Are you running or hunting?" Veronica hesitated, then poured out her heart, The lost job, the broken promise, her father's illness, the hunger, the cold. The queen nodded gently, as if she'd heard this tale 1,000 times. "You're not the first," she said, pressing a smoky cob of roasted maize into Veronica's palm. "When you know Lagos, you know pain. Eat. Strength finds only those who seek it." For the next hours, Veronica stayed close to the queen. She swept market floors for pennies, learned how to shield herself from trouble, where to fetch free water from leaking pipes, and how not to become prey in a city that chewed up the unsuspecting. At dusk, the queen taught her to find safety, a corner behind a shut-down pharmacy, away from men whose laughter turned dangerous after dark. But Veronica's mind swirled with worry. As the queen slept under a sheet of torn fabric, Veronica stared at the moon, begging for direction. Her pain was not mere poverty. It was that every moment spent here was a moment stolen from her promise to her family. It was then that she vowed again, "I will not be just another lost girl. I will fight for more than survival. If there is a path, I will search until my feet bleed." By the next sunrise, Veronica's resolve had hardened. In her old life, she'd built walls and houses. Now she would build her own destiny. With the queen's whispered advice ringing in her ears, she left the shelter of Ojo Square behind and entered the chaos of Balogun Market. The market was a living thing, rows of stalls straining against each other, vendors shrieking offers for peppers, cloth, cell phones, and second-hand shoes. Veronica moved through the press, scanning faces and listening, searching for opportunity. The sun glared, but she pushed onward, refusing to let exhaustion defeat her. Every coin counted now. A man selling oranges glared as she offered to help peel and arrange his merchandise. "What do you know of business?" he snapped, sizing her up like a stray dog. But as other workers failed to show, he relented, handing her a dull knife. The hours stretched endlessly, and the work was grueling. Her fingers nicked and burned by citrus juice, her feet battered from standing on hot concrete. Others noticed her stamina. Before dusk, she shifted to helping a group of tailors' apprentices, carrying bolts of fabric and running errands for scraps of food. The market was harsh, but it awarded those who endured. She learned quickly, discovered tricks to avoid being cheated, and earned trust slowly, one difficult hour at a time. At night, Veronica joined her new companions behind a partition of cardboard and crates. She shared their laughter, listened to their heartbreaks, stories of lost homes, failed dreams, parents vanished or dead. In their company, her story did not seem lonely, only one thread in a tapestry of struggle. But pain returned when she called her mother on a borrowed phone. The connection crackled, her mother's voice thick with tears and questions. "Are you safe, my child?" "Have you found help for Papa?" Veronica reassured her, hiding her hunger and exhaustion behind diminished hope. "I will not stop until I bring the money, Mama. I promise." Weeks passed in a blur of labor and sleepless nights. Veronica's hands grew tougher, her spirit shaped by hardship and friendship. Lessons bloom. Market life was not glamorous. It was savage, but it was honest. Every day she earned a little, saved what she could, and dreamed of the day she could return home victorious. One golden afternoon, while stacking fruit at her stall, Veronica heard a soft, unfamiliar voice. She turned to see a young woman dressed not in rags or lace, but in a simple cotton tunic, her skin luminous against tight black curls that framed her face. "It will help you recover." At first, Veronica was wary. Kindness in Lagos often had strings attached. But Chika's calm manner soon proved genuine. She told stories of her mother's free clinic, of a life dedicated to healing rather than profit. "Let me show you a better way to survive," Chika invited. That night, she took Veronica to her mother's shanty near the railway. The waiting room crowded with desperate faces, the air heavy with the scent of herbs. The healer examined Veronica's wounds and gave her food, medicine, and gentle advice. Lessons bloom. In return, Chika asked Veronica to help at the clinic, cleaning bandages, moving the injured, calming frightened children. Veronica found a deeper sense of purpose here, forging friendships built on compassion instead of trade. Chika became her confidant, listening as Veronica revealed the full story: the failed promise, her father's illness, and her vow. With new trust, Chika pressed the little wad of cash into Veronica's hands. "It's not much, but it's a start. Someday, you'll pay it forward." For the first time since arriving in Lagos, Veronica felt something stronger than hope: belonging. Despite this new light in her life, the past haunted Veronica's dreams. Some nights she awoke coughing on the dusty mat, clutching invisible hands and whispering for her mother. Fear haunted her. Fear that her father's health might deteriorate, that she'd fail, that she'd never escape this endless struggle. She retreated to a quiet corner of the clinic, staring at the waning sun through torn mosquito netting. The memories came roaring back: her father's booming laughter, the sound of him teaching neighborhood boys, the gentle hands of her mother braiding her hair as a child. With each recollection, her determination flickered, threatened by grief. Chika found her there, silent and shaking. Without a word, she sat beside Veronica until the storm passed. "You are strong," Chika said, "but even steel bends when it's beaten. Rest, sister. You cannot carry the weight of the world without help." Veronica nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I am afraid. What if my father dies before I send enough? What if all of this means nothing?" Chika wrapped an arm around her shoulders and comforted her as the city's night grew thick and silent. From that day, Chika and her mother became not just helpers, but family. Veronica helped more at the clinic, learned basic herbal remedies, and restored her faith in people. When news came from OG River, her father was holding on, still waiting, still hoping, her resolve steeled. "I must succeed. I will not let their sacrifice go to waste." By now, Veronica's name was whispered through the market: the girl who never gives up. Vendors approached her with offers: washing, carrying, accounting, tending children. She juggled a dozen odd jobs, sleeping less and working more, her savings growing slowly but steadily. One evening, after the last train rumbled past, an elderly merchant named Baba Tunde approached her. He ran a small but respectable store selling wares imported from the port. "You have a good head, Veronica," he said, offering her a proper job: full-time clerk and stock controller with a regular salary. The offer was more than relief. It was redemption. Veronica seized it pouring energy into Baba Tunde's business, learning quickly, earning respect among porters and patrons alike. Baba Tunde became a mentor, teaching her about commerce and city politics, trusting her to manage vital transactions. Her earnings doubled, and she sent a healthy sum home each week, enough for her father's medicines and some to lighten her mother's burdens. The sense of achievement was overwhelming but bittersweet. The city had robbed her of innocence, of comfort, of nights free of worry, but it had handed back strength and maturity. With every money transfer, every new task, she felt herself becoming whole again. For the first time, she was not just surviving, but living, with dignity, pride, and a growing sense of purpose. With every remittance, Veronica felt a swell of pride and an even greater sense of connection to her roots. On her meager phone, each text from Mama was a flame against the cold shadow of the city. At first, her mother's messages were desperate, raw with fear. "Your father grows weaker, child. The medicine costs more than we imagined. We pray for you every night." But after the first months of steady payments, the tone began to shift. Mama's voice grew steadier, hope reawakening in their small mud-walled home. And it wasn't just her family who noticed. The news spread like sunrise through OJI River. Veronica was making good in Lagos. Old friends gathered in the evenings to listen as Veronica's mother recounted the latest letter, faces aglow in the orange firelight. "She is strong, that one," an uncle would murmur. "The city has not broken her." Even her father, though still frail, found a measure of comfort as new medicines arrived, sent with care from the far-off city. Yet for all the comfort, the burden was relentless. Veronica sometimes felt as though she carried her entire family, no, her entire village, upon her narrow shoulders. Every coin sent home was a reminder. So many depend on you. You cannot fall. The responsibility pressed against her ribs. But in this pressure, Veronica found a strange elation. She had become someone her father could be proud of, someone her mother could boast about, someone her village looked to with admiration and a growing awe. On evenings after work, she would walk to the highest point near Chika's home, a broken footbridge overlooking Lagos's tangled sprawl. There she let herself dream, not just of sending money home, but of a time when she could return as more than a survivor, as a true daughter of OJI River, tested and transformed, carrying the wisdom and scars of Lagos with her. For every success Veronica carved out, Lagos presented new challenges. The city's heart was generous, one moment vicious the next. Each week, rumors of scams, police raids, or strife swept through the marketplace, and even the most established traders lived in a state of wary alertness. Veronica learned quickly that trust, once given too easily, was as sharp as a blade in the wrong hands. Lessons bloom. Once, a group of conmen tricked her with counterfeit money. Her whole week's earnings vanished with a careless handshake. Another time, a petty official demanded bribes that left her short for rent and food, forcing her to skip meals. Some nights, fights broke out just outside her workplace, the shouts of desperate thieves echoing long into the darkness. She learned to move quietly, to keep her savings well hidden, to offer nothing but smiles to strangers whose true intentions were mysterious. But for every wound, there was a balm. Chica's friendship was a fortress, her laughter a shield, her food a comfort that spoke of home. During long nights, Chica and her healer mother shared stories of legendary Lagos heroines, of villagers who remade their fortunes from nothing. Abatunde gave Veronica not just work, but wisdom, advising her to avoid certain districts, to invest rather than spend, to offer charity without inviting ruin. Most of all, she learned the particular charm of Lagos. Here, resilience was a badge of honor. When faced with setbacks, traders held impromptu fundraisers for each other. Market girls danced through their tears, and even the harshest police officer could be sweet-talked when approached with respect and wit. In this crucible, Veronica's character formed, tough as iron, but never cruel. She endured, finding ways not only to survive the city's blows, but to rebound even stronger. Autumn in Lagos saw the city transformed by storms, but in their own way, they both broke and nourished. This rainy season, a new chapter blossomed in Veronica's life. As her earnings grew, she found she could set a little aside, not just for home, but for herself and for the friends who had lifted her in darker days. On one of these gray afternoons, Veronica organized a small party in Chica's home, inviting the market friends who had become her sanctuary. Laughter bounced off the patched-up walls. Food, though simple, tasted like a feast. For a few precious hours, it was as though they were all children again, untouched by the city's bitterness. In the warmth, alliances deepened. Veronica finally shared the fullness of her heart with Chica, revealing her fear of never seeing her father well again, her guilt at not being there in his suffering, her private wish to bring Mama to Lagos, even just once, to show her that after all, something good could come from poverty and pain. Her friends listened in silence, arms wrapped around her shoulders, offering acceptance without judgment. For just a little while, hope danced freely in the cramped living room. Times were still hard, but these stolen moments of joy reminded her she was not alone. In the years to come, she would remember this as the beginning of her true Lagos family, a tribe not joined by blood, but by experience, tenacity, and an unspeakable grace that flourished in adversity. Days turned to weeks, and then to months. Each money transfer home moved her father closer to recovery, but the old man's healing was slow and often uncertain. Some mornings, Mama's voice was bright, reporting that he could sit up now, that he was eating again. Other times, fear crept in. Her father had grown silent with pain, or the doctors asked for more tests, or another round of drugs. Veronica lived suspended in anxiety and anticipation, never sure if the next call would be tragedy or triumph. But with each bit of news, she worked harder, her mission clearer. "My life is no longer just mine," she confessed to Babatunde one evening as they counted the day's profits. "Every hour I put in here is a prayer for my father's health." Baba smiled, wisdom etched in the lines around his eyes. "That's the way of our people, child. To carry each other always." Eventually, Mama's updates grew steadier. The remittances had paid for a new doctor to visit their compound. Someone had come from Enugu with special medicines. Neighbors chipped in, having seen Veronica's sacrifices from afar. Soon Papa could walk with help. He sat outside among the banana trees, listening to the radio. His laughter, albeit weak, once again a common sound. These signs of improvement brought light to Veronica's soul. All those nights on cold benches, the hunger, the despair, they had built not only her own resilience, but it also saved the life of the man she loved most. The city with teeth had not defeated her. It had become the crucible that refined her spirit. As time pressed onward, Veronica realized the contours of her path had changed. When she first arrived, every day in Lagos felt like a sentence, a punishment for poverty, a sacrifice for her parents. But now, as she watched her savings climb and her responsibilities shift, another decision began to form on the horizon. Was it time to go home? Her heart ached for her parents, for the scent of rain on the red Oji River soil, for the kinsfolk who still spun stories about her at firelit gatherings. Yet something new had taken root in her. There was pride in what she'd built, friendships she could not abandon, debts of gratitude she wanted to repay. Lagos had become both enemy and teacher, giving her scars, yes, but also conferring the kind of confidence that could never have come from comfort. Chika and Baba Tunde noticed this change. When the day comes, you'll know, Chika promised. You can be both Veronica of Oji River and Veronica of Lagos. Your journey does not end just because you go home. It grows with every person you've helped. And so, as harvest season approached in her village, Veronica decided on a plan. She would send one final large sum to Oji River, enough to restore her father's strength and ease her mother's worry for a year. Then, with her heart both heavy and light, she would take the long road home, not as a child come crawling back, but as a woman who had faced the darkest corners of the city and emerged on the other side, whole and unbroken. The journey back to Oji River felt far longer than the one that had first brought Veronica to Lagos. She left with just a single suitcase, her market clothes neatly folded beside the new ones she had bought with her hard-earned salary. In her wallet was not just money, but the memory of every bruise, every kindness, every lesson swallowed in the swirl of the big city. Lagos faded behind her like a feverish dream, its skyline receding, the coastal winds dying out, and the familiar green of the eastern homeland rising in its place. At every stop, at every village the bus passed, Veronica watched life through the window. Children racing barefoot after battered footballs. Market women laughing with their buckets balanced on heads. Elders nodding in the shade of ancient trees. The sight of Oji River itself, as she finally arrived, nearly undid her. The red earth seemed more vivid than ever, alive with the hope and toil of all the generations who had passed before her. Her mother was the first to see her, her ululation carrying through the compound like a prayer answered. Soon neighbors poured in, crowding the yard, their faces gleaming with a mix of curiosity, relief, and celebration. Her father, thinner but standing proud with the help of a neighbor, met her at the door. "My child," he managed, his voice trembling, "the city returned you to us. Not in pieces, but in glory. The reunion with everything Veronica had dreamed of, and more." The embraces, the grateful tears, the laughter loud enough to echo through the trees. She gave her father the medicine, the gifts for her mother, and a purse filled with cash, not as a boast, but as a recompense for all the months they had gone without her. "Forgive me for leaving," she whispered in her father's arms. "But no, I never stopped loving you, or fighting for you, or praying for the day I could come home." Word of her return spread as quickly as the Harmattan wind. All through that week, friends and extended family drifted in, hungry for tales of her adventures and triumphs. Veronica retold her journey in vivid fragments. The city's temptations, the terror of her first night abandoned, the miracles of finding people who cared enough to guide her, the agony of missing home while stubbornly building a life from nothing. What struck her most was how attentively the young girls listened. Some, with wide, fearful eyes, confessed that Madame P. had promised them similar miracles. Others simply wanted to know how one could survive so far from home. To these girls, Veronica was no longer just a village sister. Now she was a standard, a warning, a living hope. So she began to organize small gatherings beneath the great cola tree in their compound. There she spoke of self-worth and trust, of the false promises that lurked in luxury, and, most powerfully, of the unbreakable bonds between daughter and family. "You may one day go to the city," she would say, "but never trade your dignity. Let hope lead you, yes, but walk with your eyes open. Use your pain to teach others." Even the village elders marveled at the woman she had become. A councilman pressed coins into her hand, urging her to invest in OG River, to mentor others, and to preserve the lessons she had learned in Lagos. And every night she knelt beside her father, prized by his side, and gave thanks for the journey that had become not only her salvation, but also her calling. Veronica knew her journey was not solely for her own healing. The city had taught her to build, and now, returned to her roots, she turned her gaze to the future. With her savings, she helped her mother repair the leaking family roof and bought uniforms for children whose parents could not afford them. She started a small fund so the next generation would not have to run so hard or so blindly from poverty into danger. Lessons bloom. Inspired by her confidant, Chica, Veronica even arranged for a local healer to travel from village to village, teaching basic remedies and sharing wisdom about health and self-care. In this way, her experience became a chain of gifts, protecting others from the pitfalls she herself had barely escaped. But she did not sever the ties with Lagos. Every other week she called her friends back in the city, Chica and her mother, Babatunde, the queen of Ojo Square. They exchanged memories, shared news, and Veronica encouraged her friends in surviving and lifting those still lost in the city's whirlwind. "You are my family, too," she told them. "We build each other, whether near or far." By sowing her blessings and scars alike, Veronica became not only a daughter of OG River, but a bridge between worlds. One foot in the red earth of her beginnings, the other still firm in the bustling heart of Lagos. She found peace in the tension and made it her strength. Time, as it will, brought new challenges. Though her father recovered, he remained fragile, and Veronica knew every gift was temporary. Hardship always threatened at the horizon's edge. Yet with every hard season, failures in the harvest, shortages in the market, strange sicknesses that swept through the area, she met adversity with resolve forged in city fire. Neighbors who once pitied her family now sought her counsel. Young women asked her for guidance when city recruiters came making promises. Even the village boys, hardened by unemployment and uncertainty, listened more closely when Veronica spoke of earning trust, of surviving and thriving with their dignity intact. Her own pain became a library that others could borrow from. Sometimes, alone at night, Veronica stared at the stars beyond her window and thought of every hardship, the blisters, the hunger, the fear, the betrayal by Madam P had been a curse, but it had also become the hammer that shaped her steel. The markets, the clinic, the friends she gained and lost, each was a page in the manuscript of her life, which she now wrote with pride and generosity. Lagos, once a source of terror, now glowed in her memory as a city that had given her not what she wanted, but what she truly needed: grit, empathy, wisdom, and friendship that had crossed barriers of blood or background. In the hardest hours, she remembered the Queen of Ojo Square's proclamation: "Eat. Strength finds only those who seek it." The lesson was always the same. Survival could be lonely, but rising was always easier when hands and hearts reached out together. Years would pass, and the details of Veronica's daily struggle began to slip from memory, as all things do. But the stories endured. OGE River remembered Veronica as the girl who faced the jaws of the city and returned not only with money and medicine, but with a vision for what courage and compassion could achieve. Children born after her return came to call her Auntie V, bringing simple gifts: snails and banana leaves, woven bracelets, wildflowers from the edge of the river. Veronica's little home grew into a haven for those who needed advice, for the lost and the brave alike. Lessons bloom. She continued to send money to help old friends in Lagos, to invest in her village, and to guard the flame of hope for everyone who came after her. From time to time, the city called her back for visits, and each time she returned, she was greeted not with fear, but joy. A prodigal turned mentor, a survivor made sage. Veronica's life proved the power of resilience, the necessity of community, and the priceless value of dignity guarded in the face of ruin. Her story, spoken by firesides and in shadowed kitchens, became legend, warning and encouragement for all. In the end, what started as a desperate bid to save her father had become the map for an entire community, a map of perseverance, gratitude, and, above all, unbreakable spirit. And in the nights of brightest moon, if you listened as the wind rustled the leaves of OGE River, you could almost hear Veronica's laughter, joyful, unbroken, and utterly free.